Okay, next item is the approval of the minutes. If everybody's had a chance to look at last month's minutes, if you've got any objections or changes or anything, let me know. If not, and it looks good, then I'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the May 5th minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we got a motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Sam, is the agenda as is, or Blake?
President
Okay,
Chairman.
and if everybody's had a chance to look at it, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as is.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next item, new business. First item up on the agenda is conditional use permit hearings. First item A is Pops Cato CUP, will be presented by Blake. And in the best interest, if you're here for that, I just reiterate the rules again. You have 3 minutes to speak. If you're speaking for a group, you've got 10 minutes. That kind of keeps everything in line with time and respectful for everybody. So anyway, Blake?
Good evening. A conditional use permit is requested for the operation of JMP Solutions, a tenant of the facility to engage in agricultural manufacturing for poultry processing equipment. It serves one existing operating 60,000 square foot facility with another 60,000 square foot facility being constructed. This CUP is to bring the operation into compliance. It's on Cato Springs, about 3/4 of a mile from I-49. And here's a perspective photo of the operation as it is. The usual planning conditions apply, along with maintenance of reasonable hours that would not extend into the late evening or early morning. And the applicant must also go through a large-scale development process. The applicant is here to answer any questions you may have.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right, anybody got any questions for Blake?
Sorry, I missed that last thing you said. The applicant has to go through a large-scale development if this is approved, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Blake? All right, is the applicant, would he like to say anything? You're good? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to say anything in reference to this particular item? Yes, sir, if you'll come up here to the microphone. I think it's probably on, right, Sam? If you'll state your name and address, please, for the record.
That's it. My name is Don Dombeck, and my wife and I own 10 acres at 3355 South Cato Springs Road. We're just across Cato Springs and a little bit south from this property. I want to quickly add that, first I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board today about this. Excuse me, I'm on the wrong page here. I purchased that property in 1997, some 25 years ago, and I bought it because it was zoned ag and single-family dwellings. It's just what I was looking for, a pastoral setting, if you will, quiet, very pleasant to me, just what I wanted. The first thing I noticed going on there was a movement of a large amount of earth with pretty good size equipment. And I was curious about what was going on. I first asked a neighbor, they didn't know anything about it. There was also a large no trespassing sign went up at the entrance of it, just as the earth was being moved. So on 3 separate occasions, I stopped along the side of the road when I saw workers nearby, and I asked them, what are you guys building here? What's going on? The first two told me that they couldn't comment about it, and the third one told me that he'd get in trouble if he commented about it. So I contacted someone at county and planning that time, and I was told that the owner had proposed that for a private horse farm. And I thought, well, that's great. I couldn't think if something's going to happen there, I couldn't really think of a better thing. But construction started after that, not much later than that, on some sheet metal buildings. And by the way, I want to point out, this letter says anyway, that this is, one structure exists and is in operation, the second structure is to the east and under construction. From the side of the road, there's 3 metal buildings that are constructed, and there's a fourth, what looks to be a considerable larger building being constructed. So it's not 1 plus 1, it's 3 plus 1. The questions I have today is, you know, first of all, why was I not notified in a letter dated May 25th of this year about the request for this conditional approval when constructions have been going on there for over a year? The other question I have is what's going to eventually take place on this development? How many more buildings are going to go up? How much more is this going to look not like the rest of what's out there, and which caused me to buy property out there? How much more noise and dust will emanate from the property? You know, we have a nice tree-covered deck on the front of our property that faces the road there, and it's constant banging during the daytime hours, not constant, but frequent banging of construction equipment. There's a lot of dust comes from there, and especially the horns on the backup construction equipment, the ding, ding, ding. So my deck is not nearly as pleasant as it was before this started. And I wonder how much value my property is going to lose as a result of this. I don't know if I'd have bought the property or not if this was going on over there when I did, but I would suspect at least some prospective buyers would think it's worthless because of it. Now what's going on seems to me, from what I can tell, seems like a perfect fit for an industrial park. And I don't understand why it's located out there.
Mr. Beck, I'm gonna have to ask you with your time limit, you're gonna have to wrap it up.
Well,
Okay.
I will say that given I wasn't notified of this for as long as I was, to stick me with 3 minutes to comment about this doesn't seem entirely fair. I'll try to wrap up quickly, though. First of all, I know exactly how this decision will be made on whether this permit is issued. Can someone tell me that? What's
I
gonna
cannot tell
happen
you that,
after
sir.
today? Will you guys vote whether to approve it or not? Is that what'll happen?
We will vote on the conditional use permit. Yes, sir.
Okay. Today?
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know if I have time to stay through the whole meeting today, but I would like to be notified as soon as possible what your decision is about this. You know, I hate to think that I need to involve a lawyer to protect what's so obviously my property right out there, in my opinion, but I don't know what other recourse I have. I'm sure you're gonna hear that a whole lot of money was spent out there already. It seems to me the appropriate time for all of this was either before the property was purchased or before construction began. So this seems all late to me, and I would at some point, I don't have to have it today, but I wanna know why I'm just now being notified.
If I speak to this, Mr. Lester. So this came to us like last year, or like the year before during like COVID as an agricultural like use for like horse barn. We issued like addresses for the property, and I guess the intent has changed until like recently one of the neighbors complained and we had to go and inspect, and we noticed like the instructions happening. That's why we contacted the owner to come in compliance and apply for a CUP and large scale development like to follow up.
Okay.
Well, the final thing I'd ask for at least some of you to drive by out there and put yourself in my position and ask if you would like for this to be going on out there if it was your property.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody else like to speak to this? All right, yes, ma'am. If you'll state your name and address, please.
Mona Foster.
Well, up here, yeah, sorry.
I can be loud enough at the Mona Foster, 3330 South Cato Springs Road. And really, I just have a couple questions. Why are we not here asking for rezoning instead of permission to operate?
Everything in Washington County is zoned single-family agricultural. We don't necessarily do rezonings. We do conditional use permits for a particular application on a piece of property.
Okay, so you can buy a piece of property in Washington County and do anything you want on it.
That's not what I said, ma'am.
Basically, you just have to get permission to operate whatever you build on it.
You have to
Anything
go-
outside of single-family agricultural, yes.
Okay. So the Summers next door to us, to the south of us, I believe, is an older couple that has a business that operates there, and he makes signs and such as that. And I think someone approached him from the county and told him he couldn't have his sign up anymore because it was not zoned for business.
Ma'am, he needs to go like through like the proper channels and apply for a conditional use permit. The conditional use permit is basically the rezoning for that area, but it's for the business itself. So let's say like you started like a business like making sign, and you sold the property, and the guy after you came like to make like a coffee shop, he needs to go through the process again. It doesn't like transfer to the new owner. It has to stay with the business.
So it's not a zoning issue, it's a permission to operate your business?
Yeah, and that's part of the zoning.
Okay.
So that's it. And like, we normally, when you do a CUP, we ask the 4 questions. Is this gonna be any employees in the building? Yes or no? Is there's gonna be a big sign outside? Yes or no? Are gonna have like, customers in and out? And the 4th one is gonna be, do you have like big delivery trucks? If any one of them is yes, you have to have a CUP.
Okay. So the business that's being operated there right now, JMP Solutions, is manufacturing poultry equipment?
Correct.
What kind of poultry equipment? Like feeders,
I couldn't
feeder
speak-
lines?
I could not speak to what they're manufacturing.
Okay.
The applicant and owner is here if he wants to like explain more, because like we don't know exactly. We're working on
That's not a
the
question
zoning
you
here.
asked
I
for?
heard
it's not us.
the use of the word lasers and some really high-end stuff.
Okay, I'd like to hear more about the operation of the business in that unit that's there now, and what is going to be operating in the warehouse to the east of that one.
That's
And
next-
just for the record, the gentleman spoke that there were 3+1 warehouses. The 2 smaller warehouses were already there. He just remodeled them and made them look good. So he really has only constructed 1 new warehouse, and then for the JMP Solutions, and then the other huge warehouse to the east is newly under development right now. So that's
Right.
really,
And that's an extension of JMP Enterprises, or
JMP Solutions?
JMP Solutions, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I would like to know more about what kind of business, what they're making in there. At one point, I had heard a contract with Boeing airplanes and such as that, so I just want to make sure what's going on, because I do live next door, and I just kind of like to know what's going on next door.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment? All right, if nobody else wants to comment, I'll bring it back to the board. Oh. Okay, yeah, if you would like to speak to any of that, you're more than welcome to rebuttal back against that.
And answer questions. I agree there's been, construction, but that creates a little noise, but that's just a temporary situation. I've talked to all the adjoining neighbors all for the last 2 or 3 years and kept them kind of apprised on whatever plan I had at the time. Didn't know there was any trouble with anybody. And like I said, the noise and the dust is just construction. And I did apologize to one of them because I failed to mention that there's going to be a lot of beep, beep, beep sounds for a couple days. But as far as JMP goes, they build robotics, chicken disassembly machines. And they were
Ma'am,
chicken disassembly.
you, wait a minute, sir, wait a minute. Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody understands. He's going to speak, you're going to speak. If you got a question, I'll be more than happy to give you an opportunity to hear it. Again, if you'll speak into the microphone a little more.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yeah. The Fosters I've talked to a lot. They're the neighbors, and we've done several things and made some accommodations for each other. But I'll be glad to take Roy and Mona through through the shop and show them exactly what we're doing with JMP. And they are a Canadian company, kind of had some urgency about finding a place down here, and they are a new customer for ours, and it's going to be a pretty interesting deal. And we're good neighbors. We're quiet and clean and neat. And as soon as the construction's done, we're very clean and neat people, very accommodating. So, any questions you have?
Any questions for the applicant? I got one.
Yes, sir.
At what point with the approval for a horse barn, and we started doing what we're doing, did we not think to come back and ask at that point before we started all the construction and remodel and so forth and so on?
Great question. You know, I can't tell you the exact date, but my granddaughter does the jumping horses thing, unfortunately, and you know, we had thought that we might do that there. We had probably 500,000 bees there at one point. I thought maybe we'd do a bee processing thing there, and this opportunity came up. Did I share the letter? Did you share the letter that I sent?
I don't see a letter in our packet.
It kind of goes over that timeline, but people ask me all the time if I had a plan, and I didn't. But you know, opportunity comes up, and I spoke with Blake. I don't know when I first spoke to Mr. Chapman, but I was in contact with the planner before. Nathan, yeah, I spoke to him every couple of months, keeping him apprised of how directions I was going and what I needed to do along those timelines. But again, it was, you know, just an opportunity that came up.
Do we have any notes in reference to any of that?
I don't.
Okay.
And I'm sure Nathan would be,
And at any one point, he didn't tell you if that's your different plan to come back and,
yeah, he said if you change to the use of it to commercial use, then you need to come back, and that's what I did.
that looks pretty far along in the commercial use compared to coming back and asking. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I had.
I can find out when did he apply for an address, and I can let you know when.
Okay.
And I think to address the buildings were gonna be there regardless, and, you know, whether I can use them or not is, you know, up to you guys.
How long has JMP Solutions been going or operating?
March, maybe?
At any one point, was it relayed that you needed to stop production or construction until you got the approval on the CUP? Okay. Anybody else? Ma'am, was yours the hearing thing, or did you have another question? No, I'm good. Okay. Okay, all right. Anybody else want to speak? All right, it's to the board then.
Blake, considering what is going on now, do we feel like we've had proper notification to all the adjacent property owners and?
We are within compliance of the ordinance. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But only since he came for a CUP. Obviously, when it started being JMP Solutions in March, no one obviously was notified.
I can't preemptively notify people of things that have not happened.
So, just so I got this right in my head, what we're considering now is a conditional use permit for the structure as it exists. The large-scale development would be the conversation for the new building that's going to be built. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And we're not hearing large-scale development tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, if this is passes, it has to go like, he needs to include like everything in the large-scale development just to be in, yeah, I mean, sure.
Well, I've already brought it back to the board, sir, but I'll make an exception.
I was just wondering, I didn't understand why it was this late process that I was notified. With construction going on so long out there.
I don't think anybody knew at that point. I mean, based off of what we did before and what it was approved
Yeah,
for.
until like
that
one of the
is-
neighbors called and complained, we went
Yeah.
like there like and
Yeah.
checked, and we then called him, and as he said, it was like during March, April time, and you know, like the whole thing started like maybe 5-6 weeks ago, so he just like came in time when we knew about it.
But as far as the notification,
The latest words that the property owners will be notified this
The project started as an agricultural, which
Exactly.
is used by right. The project started as a barn, which you don't have to notify property owners in county to build agricultural use. So when it converted from agricultural to commercial was whenever the alert or the notification was required, which you should have received.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. No, that's all right, that's all right. Hey, as long as we got them understanding, that's fine. All right. Again, unless anybody's got any questions, back to the board.
Conditional use will have to go to the quorum court also?
Correct?
Sorry, I know I keep asking questions. All the adjacent properties, and I know I was a little late, are all the adjacent properties residential?
A mix of residential, agricultural, yes.
Okay.
Just also to answer your question, it's like in the planning area, like Fayetteville planning area, and so it's too close to the city of Fayetteville property. And actually, like the first time, like I was contacted by the neighbor, he explained it to me. I thought like he was talking about the University of Arkansas facilities, because it's just across the street from it, so.
Okay, final question and I'll quit. So the large-scale development is for the new building. So am I to assume then no construction, dirt work, anything else will be done between now and the time we hear the large-scale development?
I do not have the ability to red tag construction.
Sure. That would be the intent from Washington County Code, correct?
Essentially,
Okay. Is the applicant aware of that?
No, but this construction go on at the moment.
That was gonna be my next
Yeah,
question.
I mean, this hadn't been done right or well, but it's done, and I tend to be in favor of recommending approval of the CUP. I'm probably more hung up on the large-scale development aspect of it. If we're continuing to add structure to this property, then I think we probably need to stop and do that and let us ask the questions and set the time of operation and some of that sort of thing that we typically do in a large-scale development, in my opinion.
Brian, I see you over there. Are you good? You got a comment or no?
No, I was just saying, the planning board has interjected on, he said setting times and things like that, and I would just caution you on doing those things, because I don't know, your authority as the planning board, I don't know, extends to setting dates and time, hours of business. I know it's happened, and I've never been asked, but since you brought it up, that's, as it relates to that sort of thing, anyways, I'll just caution you on it.
Mr. Chairman, it appears to me that we need an amendment to the original CUP with the terms of the current CUP objective, because even though you don't have a process that you're comfortable with, to go forward would be to go forward with new information, new conditions, and basically a new contractual intention.
Except there's not a CUP in place now, because the development done to date was under use by right because it was deemed to be agricultural.
Can you say then that a CUP is imputed upon it because of the change, Mr. Attorney?
No.
Why not?
No, agricultural, anything that's single-family residential or agricultural is a use by right. There's no permit required. If the applicant wanted to go and put, 30 chicken houses out there and bring in 100 18-wheelers a day, absolutely no permit. We allow that. So anything that you do, unless you're building multi-family residences or anything other than agricultural, then we require you to come in and ask for a conditional use permit. So if it was agricultural before, there's no need for a permit.
Okay, let me ask you this, but with the original CUP,
There was no
there was no CUP. Just straight agriculture, you asked for a barn.
Yeah,
Okay, so this CUP doesn't negate that, okay, all right, I'm good, all right, okay, I understand. Okay,
I feel like that a CUP has been imputed on because of the change in conditions. And,
but I think that's what I just asked, Neil, right? There's no CUP there in place now, so this one doesn't impede on another CUP.
I understand that, but one has been enacted because of the conditions. The requirement of a CUP has been enacted because of the requirement of the.
No, that's what we're voting on, is it not? We're voting on the CUP, so there's not a CUP there.
That's correct. You're voting on the issuance of a CUP, which would then give the owner the right to use the land for a purpose other than agricultural and single-family residential.
And, okay, I'm with you.
Okay, all right, you're good. All right, anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the Pops Cato CUP as presented.
I've got a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I've got a second. Sam, let's do roll call. No.
Philip Humbard,
Yes.
Neil Helm. Yes. Jay Piercy,
Yes.
Lisa Miller,
No.
Lauren Shackelford,
Yes.
Kiara Lawrence.
No.
So we have four
4 yeses, 3.
4 yeses, like 3
3
noes.
noes. It passes. Well, does it have to be, no? 4, 3, 5, 2? Yeah,
It
it
has,
passes. All right. As far as anything in reference to what we just voted on and everything, they do have the option to appeal.
they have 30 days to appeal, and, normally, like, we send the stuff, like, to the quorum court, but since this, like, within the 30 days of appeal, it has to wait.
Can you hear that, Mr. Domback? You have 30 days to appeal, if you'd like to appeal our decision, okay?
Yeah, the public, you have, like,
And if you need to, you can call the planning department and get with them.
yeah, the appeal goes through, like, the circuit clerk office. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question of the county attorney before we move forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so with everything that was just said, large-scale development pending is still our county's approval for the new building to be built. Do we need to notify applicant? Do we have any responsibility or need that he potentially could be building a building that won't be approved at large-scale development, that he would have to find agricultural use for, or it would sit empty? Do we have any sort of obligation to notify him that if he continues to build that between now and the time a large-scale development's approved, it's not a granted use by right, and he may not have the ability to use that once it's built? He's building it, buyer beware, I guess, he's building at his own risk if he continues to construct before large-scale development's done.
I believe the large-scale development aspect of it is more administrative than legislative. So you've voted now, and if it's ratified by the court, by the quorum court, they will have a conditional use permit, which will allow them to use it for that which which they've asked for. As far as the large-scale development is concerned, what happens is that's handled, the planning board works with the developer to make sure that they're adequate fire, adequate road, make sure they're water, electrical, all those things are done. And as far as, the planning board is concerned, you're there to look and make sure that, yes, in fact, those things have been met. So it's less of saying, yeah, we like the way this looks or not. It's, have you met these technical aspects of what's being built?
So the
And
conditional, I'm sorry.
typically that won't come back to you until it's all, the planning team is not going to bring that back to you to look at until they feel like all those aspects, the technical aspects, have been met.
So the conditional use permit will cover the existing buildings on this property, plus any additional buildings that are built for this business. Is that accurate?
Yes, the conditional use permit applies to the entire parcel of property.
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And once again, the only reason he's going through the LSD, the large scale, because it is bigger than 1 acre.
All right, good, all right. Next item, Greenland Planning Area. Item B, Hydro Solar CUP. Blake, you're up again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I tell you what, hang on just a minute. Hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but if, yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time, thank you.
A CUP is requested for the operation of a 5-megawatt solar generation facility due south of Greenland, intersecting Campbell Road and due west of I-49. Neighboring properties are a mix of agricultural and residential. The overall site is about 90 acres, and it's going to be developed on about 35 of the 90 acres with 3 solar generation fields. Typical planning conditions, our only real condition is continue answering technical matters that may arise. And the applicant is here if you have any questions.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Any questions for Blake? All right, would the applicant like to speak? You're the applicant? We're going the applicant first, ma'am. Sorry, that's all right. If you'll state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Peter Davis.
All right, you got anything other to add other than what Blake has said?
Yeah, so just wanted to provide just a little bit of an overview of the project itself. I'll try to be brief and happy to answer questions. But I work on behalf of NextEra Energy Resources, which is based out of Florida. Our company develops all types of solar projects throughout the U.S. in addition to all other types of power generation projects, whether it be nuclear or natural gas and whatnot. I work specifically in the solar division. And so what we do is we focus on, I know it rather seems large, but comparatively to most other solar projects, this one is relatively small. And these projects are what we call distributed generation projects, which basically provide energy to the local areas, essentially. So the energy is not transported out of the county or sold to the utility. Our intent with this project is to sell this energy for savings to a local business who has enough energy load to take on the project. It could be one or multiple businesses, but given the way the Arkansas state laws are for net metering of projects, it's got to be within Ozarks Electric co-op territory. So this project, as mentioned, is 5 megawatts AC. It will be essentially just only solar. There will be no battery or any other type of generation. We will have a fence that will go just only around the solar arrays, the ones that you saw there. It will not be up against the property line or anything like that. We will retain all vegetative area that goes around the perimeter of the facility and pretty much majority of all the existing vegetation that's within the site itself. But obviously, as you saw in the preliminary design sets that we submitted, there will be a few trees that will unfortunately have to be taken out where the arrays are placed. But we want to retain these trees, obviously, because we have no use to get rid of them for first of all, and second of all, they provide kind of a vegetative screen for the projects. The project is remotely operated, unmanned, except for when we need to bring in, wash the panels for performance purposes, and any other, troubleshooting or maintenance that's required. We will create an additional access road that comes off West Campbell Loop Road. So, a few trees might have to be taken out just for that purpose, but it will be approximately about a 20-foot wide access road. In addition, there's no noise, there's no odors, there's no lights at night, except for just motion detecting lights if someone were to try to break into the facility for security purposes. Obviously, it would just trigger a motion activated light, but those will be per the requirements of the CUP. Those will be faced inwards and, you know, pretty standard stuff. We will not require any water from the local water authority. We'll be bringing in low mineral content water, essentially from a local water purveyor, to help wash the panels. But other than that, that's pretty much the most activity that these solar farms typically see during the period. So it will operate for about 20 to 30 years. During that time, you know, the contracts are set, the price is set, they cannot be adjusted. Neither party can terminate the contract unless one party is in breach of the contract, of course. But, you know, these solar farms essentially are an investment to both parties, essentially for energy savings for the customer, or our customer, I should say. And then for us, it's an investment to over the long period of time that, you know, it would be there. We are also leasing the property from the landowner, who does receive lease payments for the duration of the project that will be there. And we are also contractually obligated to remove the system after its useful life. And then we are also contractually obligated in the lease agreement to restore the property to its natural state. Fortunately for these solar farms, there's not a whole lot of impact to the property. It's galvanized steel piers that are driven into the ground, about 6 to 7 feet in depth approximately. And then those steel piers kind of are mounted with a track, or what we call a racking essentially, that holds the modules in place. And then those will tilt east-west as the sun goes from morning to evening. And then after that, it shuts itself off, goes into stow mode, and that's it. There's essentially no noises that you'll hear from it while it's in operation or while it's not in operation. Trying to think if there's anything else I can say, but I'm happy to answer questions.
That's a pretty good description.
Mr. Chair, I got a question. You may not be able to answer this, since you're not a representative of Ozark Electric, but there are two solar fields now that I'm aware of. One's 51st Street or 54th Street off of Weddington and West Fayetteville, and there's one Highway 412 in East Springdale. Can you give us some sort of conceptual, is this the same size, larger, significantly larger? Do you have any feel for the size of those two solar fields that are in existence now compared to the size of this one?
The only ones that I've known about in my discussions with the planning department was from a company called Today's Power, and I believe those are around 3-5 megawatts, so those are roughly about the same size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant?
I just had one more. You answered my question on sound. I just had one question on if any of the solar arrays are known for any visual glares or reflections or others towards neighboring properties.
No, so essentially the solar panels themselves are designed to absorb sunlight for obvious purposes. They are coated with like an anti-reflective glass that reduces any glare. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much about it.
What do you do with the vegetation underneath them? Or does it?
Yeah, good question. So typically, we leave the vegetation in place. We hire people to mow it on an as-needed basis. Obviously, we don't want one reason why we keep the vegetation there is to help reduce, we don't want just bare dirt, and then, you know, when wind comes, it causes dust issues and stuff like that. So we just leave it in place. There's been cases where, you know, we worked with local sheep, not goats, obviously, or cattle, but sheep usually are just kind of like a natural mower for us, typically. But most cases, I should say, is we just hire someone to come in and mow in between the panels.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, does anybody else want to speak to this? And if you do, if you'll come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lisa Porter. My address is, address?
Yes, ma'am.
2706 Colton Drive, Springdale. I own 2.5 acres directly across from where this project's going to be. I bought that land in 2005. I bought it for the obvious, beautiful 180 panoramic view to be a retirement home to be built someday soon. I did have questions. Some of them were answered. I was wondering about noise, if there was going to be any humming. I was also wondering about the glare to neighbors or to the highway drivers. The area is on a long, curvy, steep, hilly, narrow 2-lane road. As far as trucks coming and going from that, that would seem to me to be a big issue, safety for anyone else driving in that area. The land is, I mean, there's some industry type things on the other side of 49, but on this side, there's nothing but just pasture land and homes. So I would say there's no other industrial type thing in this area. I did also have some questions as far as if there were going to be like electrical grid type stations or water type stations that would be there as far as eyesore or anything else. Did mention bringing water in. Like I said, that would maybe be a hazard issue to the narrow road that it's on. Are they going to be building a bigger water line in that area if they develop this? Obviously, it's going to decrease the value of my land as far as the view goes. Just generally not for it, but it's just, but some of those questions were answered, so.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you,
Thank
ma'am. Yes, sir? Again, once you sit down, if you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Larry Kennedy. I live at 11022 Southwest Campbell Road, and we're just to the south of the proposed solar farm. We're within 100, 150 feet of the proposed farm. I've done a ton of research, and that's part of my business. I'm gonna have to omit quite a bit of it. If anybody wants specifics, I'll discuss it with you separately or questions later. My wife and I bought this property in 1992, and it has been our plans to live our life there. The reason we bought out there was for the views, the serenity, the peacefulness. That's why people buy in country settings. They don't want the hustle and bustle, the industrial applications close to them. This was going to be part of our nest egg for retirement. One might say, well, if you don't like it, sell it and leave. Well, unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag. The information that there's going to be a solar farm has been distributed. It's known. I don't think we could afford to take the loss that would result from property next to a solar farm. Even with the high appreciation over the last 2 years in residential properties, especially properties with land, we would be losing money to do that. I looked at several studies, most of them commissioned by utility companies. how great solar farms are, how they do not harm the environment. They have no reflection on adjoining properties. They do not devalue them. I've had experience with that. You can't always believe what you hear. Sometimes you can't even believe what you see. So fortunately, or unfortunately, these studies, you take them with a grain of salt. I looked at a study in Florida that said totally opposite of what was reported. And this study was done by a conservation company down in Florida. And they said it did devalue properties. It changed the wildlife around the property. One of the studies said, and this came out of California from the Conservation Society out there, that animals were attracted to the light, but nature told them to stay away, and they just absolutely left the area. And that's one of the things that we enjoy. I've read a study where an appraiser in Raleigh, North Carolina, said in his findings, and he said he had done 100 samplings, meaning that he had looked at 100 properties that had sold around these solar farms, and he said that the difference he could see was a plus or minus 5%, meaning properties could go up. But he went further to say that he had been asked to be an expert witness, and he refused to do so because studies of properties adjacent to these solar farms would probably be damaged, and he wasn't prepared to be an expert witness in favor of the utility company. On a professional side, I'm an appraiser. I'm a certified general appraiser. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've appraised everything from hospitals to residences, nursing homes, even a rat farm. I think I know what I'm doing when it comes to appraising. There are two things that in every appraisal that you look for, or that's going to be part of an appraisal. One is view, and the other one is external obsolescence. View is very self-explanatory.
Mr. Kennedy, I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to have to
Okay,
ask you.
I'll
I've
be real-
given you 4.5 instead
I'm
of 3.
sorry,
So.
I knew this was going to happen.
Okay.
View is something you look at. And if your view is disintegrated, or if you buy for a mountain, then that is part of the appraisal. The external obsolescence is the most important thing. And that means anything outside of your property line that affects your value is called an external obsolescence. I can go through countless stories, but one pointed story is what happened today. A property right across the street from this solar farm went up for sale for $310,000. And in today's market, if any of you people that bought houses or shopped them, you know that's a cheap price. This house, 1,900 square feet on 3.25 acres. In an average condition, it was sale for probably $390,000. They put it on the market for $310,000. I looked at the pictures. The house was dated on the inside. When you do the math,
Mr. Kennedy, I'm going
okay, when you do the math,
okay.
$50,000
Okay.
is missing, and that's for one reason. Thank you for
Thanks,
your
sir.
patience.
You're right. All right. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Yes, sir. If you'll state your name and address, please, sir.
My name is James Mason. I live at 11216 Southwest Campbell Road in Fayetteville. My wife and I bought this property in 1986, March of 1986, so we've been there some 36 years. This farm is going to come right up to my fence. I'm on the direct south border of this solar farm. You know, I'm not going to sit here and beat you guys to death. I mean, you all know what this is. I'm a real estate agent. I know for sure what it's going to do to my property values and my neighbors as well. You know, I could ask you, is it going to cause a glare? And I know this gentleman covered some of that earlier. Is it going to do this? Who's going to do that? When will they do this? Will anybody maintain? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna bore you with that. I'm just gonna ask you one question. When you make your vote tonight, put yourself in my shoes. Whenever I get up of a morning, now I go out on my back patio and drink my coffee and look at cattle grazing. I don't want to go out there and look at a bunch of solar panels. I don't think you would either. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else want to speak? All right, I'll bring it back to the board then.
Mr. Chairman, we've seen these several times, and each time we've approved them, and each time we've heard the same basic comments. For this reason, I don't see how we can be inconsistent in this situation.
Any other comments? All right, it's in front of the board.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the hydrosolar CUP.
Got a motion to approve?
I'll second the motion.
We've got a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, passes 7-0. Again, the same thing. If you'd like to reach out to the planning department, you have 30 days to appeal our decision. So, all right, next item, land development hearings, Greenland planning area. Item C, hydrosolar pre-LSD.
Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. This is a continuation of hydrosolar. As the applicant mentioned, there is a life cycle plan of about 30 years, at which point they've also provided plans for decommissioning. There will be no on-site water detention, and the water...
Hang on a minute, Blake, let's let him leave.
Oh.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you kindly. Again, it's active development on about 35 acres out of the 90-some-odd acres. The generation facilities are to be fenced. There will be internal access roads, a minimum of 16 feet wide, and access will be a approximately 20-foot log-secured fence from Campbell. The site drainage will follow the natural flow, and there will be no on-site water detention. They provided a decommissioning plan at the expiration of the usefulness of the facility.
Is that it?
That's it.
Blake, let me ask one question. I'm assuming that black line all the way around there is the fencing to enclose it all in one fence, and they're not individually fenced, correct?
That is property line.
That's the property line, so each one of those will be individually fenced? No?
I think that's what he said earlier.
The purple is basically the fence line, is my understanding.
Okay, that was my question in reference to that, okay. Yeah, so, plus the vegetation, yeah. So, okay, that was my question. Any other questions, anybody?
Question, staff, anything you feel different, missing compared to some of the others we looked at from a staff? Any staff concerns with the plan that was presented to you?
I don't really have a concern. The packet seemed pretty thorough. All submittals seem to be on the up and up, but I am not a civil engineer or electrical engineer.
I understand.
Yeah, and he has to go through like the whole conditions, like the fire marshal and all of that. It's like the same as everything else.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
All right, it's in front of the board then. Well, wait a minute, let me ask again. Is there anybody that would like to have public comment on this one? All right, with nobody here, then I'll bring it to the board.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for recommendation approval of hydrosolar pre-LSD as stated, subject to staff comments.
Got a motion?
I'll
Got a second?
second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes 7-0. All right, one quick question, Brian. In looking at the rest of the agenda and everything, and all of these are pretty much finals, replats, things like that, is it okay to ask for a consent agenda and then ask if there's any objections here, any objections in the thing, and then vote on them all at once?
So I would say that that's a good question, and for several reasons. The Quorum Court recently, within the last few years, passed an ordinance that would allow them to have a consent agenda, but their process is different than your process. State law requires them to read all ordinances 3 distinct readings. And they can be all done at once, or that can be done in 3 different meetings. On consent agenda items for them, it's typically an appropriation ordinance, which only has to be read once, so long as it gets 10 votes. I say all that to say, for you, I think you could make a motion to approve all of these because there's no actual reading that goes on. So I think you could make a motion to approve these all together. I think the best thing to do, and I'm not saying you can't do that, but another thing to think about would be possibly amending your bylaws to say, hey, also, we can put a consent agenda, items on the consent agenda. If we all vote, then they stay on the consent agenda, and we can pass all those things at once. But certainly, I do not see any reason why someone couldn't make a motion to pass items E, F, G, and H. But I do think that they've got to be at least presented to you before you do all that. You get what I'm saying? I would not dispense of that, and then I would certainly allow public comment before you vote on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay? All
I'm
right.
going to provide a summary of all the items, okay?
Okay.
Replat of Tract 1 of Greenboro Subdivision is a 2-tract split, 1.5 acre and 1.5 acre respectively. Staff has no concerns. The next item is replat of Tract 1 Skyview Subdivision is a family tract split of 3.1 and 2.8 acres. Staff has no concerns. The next item is replat of Tract 2 Skyview 2 Subdivision is a 2-tract split of 3 and 2 acres. Staff has no concerns. The next item is replat of lots 4 and 5 of Magnolia Acres Phase 1 subdivision is a lot line adjustment from about 4.6 to 3.7 acres and a lot split into a 6 acre and 2.8 acre tract. Staff has no concerns. And the last item is the Magnolia Acres Phase 2 final subdivision with engineering certification that it's been inspected and built to plan. Thank you.
Okay. With that being presented, we've got 3 people in the audience. I don't think Judge is going to speak on any of them. So do any of you 3 have any objections to any of the items that we just talked about? Okay, so with no objections to the public comment, then I'll bring it back to the board for a motion to approve.
I would ask them if they have any comment, though.
Oh, do you have any comment? Sorry. Do you even have any comment to any of those? Okay, all right, thank you, got you. All right, then I will bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for approval of items D through H as stated on the approved agenda.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the following items all have passed 7-0. Which
Mr. Chair,
takes
can I
us.
make one other comment?
Yep.
As somebody who served on 2 other municipal planning boards, consent agendas can be a great thing. I would encourage us to consider changing our bylaws to allow the county planning board to have consent agenda items that have the approval of city staff. Thank you.
I think that's something that staff can get with me, and we can work up for your next meeting to have that on the agenda to vote on.
Perfect, thanks, Brian. All right, last item is other business, current development, planning department, planning board meetings. You got anything other than that? And let everybody know? Next one's July 14th. Next month, I will let you know, Philip, that I will not be here. I'll be in Dallas on business, so it'll be yours. Any other thing other than that? Motion to approve or adjourn? I adjourn this meeting.